Welcome back to the Winning Post powered by the Serum Institute of India. Now, breeding is something which is very important to the sport of horse racing. So what is really more important? Is it the stallion? Is it the broodmare? It is an absolute battle of male versus females. Let's take a look at what the experts have to say about this.
In the age-old battle of the sexes comes another, stallions versus broodmares. Which of these is more important? As is the case with all debates, in this one too there are two opposing views, each with their own share of justifications and arguments, each of them equally valid.
This is a very controversial question, and a lot of people believe that the female family is equally important. I don't agree with that view, and I've proved it time and again that it's the sire that's much more important.
Well, naturally it has to be both because after all a thoroughbred has parentage from both sides. But if you had to pick one, I think it would be the sire because the sire produces almost maybe 50 to 80 horses a year. The dam produces only one. So the influence of the sire in an owner's mind is most important.
It's a difficult question to ask, but if I had to choose one between the two, I would say that quality comes from the sire. Because the same dam given to different stallions produce different type of horses.
The broodmare, without a doubt. For one, I think any genetic pool, 75% is from the female side, even humans, I think. And 25% is the addition by the sire. That's the rule of thumb that I always follow anyway. If you look at whole of Europe, there are probably 4 dominant sires. You can't get to them now because the price is so high. The only way you compete with these sires, which are now controlled by 3 or 4 families, is through the female family. That's it. There's nothing else. Absolutely. I mean, this year's ARC winner is a typical example. Motivator is not a great sire. It's the mother who did it.
I don't think you can oversimplify these things. I think they both play an equally important role. Just to give you an example, if you have a plebeian mare bred to a top stallion, not likely she'll produce a star. Similarly, if you have a very well-bred mare and you cover her by an ordinary stallion, I don't think you'll get much. I think they both play an equally important role.
Stallions are often considered to be the more important half of the stallion-mare breeding equation, with breeders and owners both giving more importance to the sire line of the pedigree when buying or breeding a horse. In spite of this, there are some who give equal or sometimes even more importance to the dam line. So how does one determine which of these is more important?
It's a very interesting question. I'll come to the technical side of it first. According to the International Cataloging Standard and the International Stud Book Committee, a non-thoroughbred, if successfully mated 7 times with a thoroughbred, can be converted into a thoroughbred, which says that if you look at the calculation, it is 50% sire, 50% dam, then the next generation. So as per the books, it's 50-50%. My personal belief, both of them are equally important, but in a lot of cases there are prepotent stallions who stamp their stock very significantly. You can look at them and you can make out it's them, and that reflects in their performances as well.
A quick look at most classic winners in India suggests that sires stamp their broodline more prominently as compared to the dam. Brazil is an excellent example of this. He is a sire who produced a crop of champions with 56 individual classic winners and more than 100 classic wins.
If you take in India, for example, sires like Razine, Placerville, and now multidimensional. So when an owner buys, if the sire is a top-class classic sire, then that would gain preference. And if especially it's out of a classic mare, then that's still better. But I think it's the domination of the sire that is most important in the purchase of a horse. We definitely look principally at the sire. For example, this year, a multi-dimensional out of virtually any mare would be preferred to another stallion with not that record. On the other hand, if it's a top class mare from an average stallion, that is also good, but I think the first choice would be on choosing a stallion who has a proven record, who has produced classic winners.
Genetically, though, the mare is responsible for 50% of the foal, with some breeders even arguing that the dam affects the offspring at a rate of 60% or even more. Temperament, talent, and conformation are each tied closely to the mare's genetic structure, a structure she passes from generation to generation.
There are certain dams or certain broodmares that are blue hens. That means that they have so much quality themselves that whichever stallion they go to, they still produce a good horse. But if they were given to a superior stallion, they would produce a champion. However, if you have a top-class stallion, you know, a prepotent stallion that stamps his progeny, then even mediocre mares can produce champion horses.
There are a bunch of blue hen mares who mated to different stallions, have consistently produced good horses.
Well, always the mare produces. I would go for a very well-bred mare. I wouldn't buy an ordinarily bred mare. So a mare is very important.
After all is said and done, the battle between the sexes rages on, with no definite conclusion in sight, with most in the fraternity still giving more weightage to the sire than the dam.
Assuming that the conformations are equal and they fulfill the other criterias, if a mare has consistently produced a lot of winners with various stallions, I don't mind picking up from the mare. Otherwise, it would be from the stallion. It's good to have a prepotent stallion if you can in your system. They really upgrade the stock overall. And a lot of lineages over the period of time. If you look at the one in Europe right now, which is a Sadler's Wells Galileo ones, it's a classic example of a very prepotent stallion, depending on that.
Very rarely, and more so, that if the sire is not a successful sire of sires, his son, even if they are Derby winners, when they go to stud, they fail. So you see the Northern Dancer family, most of the champion sires that have come out worldwide have been his sons and his grandsons. Same way Mr. Prospector. And so definitely I feel predominantly the sire plays a much bigger role than the female. I'm not saying that the female has no role to play. Another good example is if you see the leading studs in India, it's the leading stud who's got the leading sire that becomes the leading stud.
You see Razin, numbered account. You see multidimensional, he comes from the female line of Mr. Prospector. You see all the top stallions in the world, Galileo, Sadler's Wells, Danehill, they all have superb dam lines because the father is the same and then the mother makes a difference when you have a superior father. But of course, if you didn't have a Danehill on top or a Northern Dancer on top, then you wouldn't start.
In spite of this, it is amply evident that the mare plays an undeniably essential role in the breeding equation and is equally, if not more important than the stallion.
And there's a lot of other factors. There's conformation, there's upbringing, there's training. All these things come into play. So if you're asking me to, sort of put it on the line, I'd say they both play an equally important part in progeny.
Well, that's all that we have for you today on this Power Packed episode of The Winning Post powered by the Serum Institute of India. We're going to continue bringing all the horse racing action from around the world as always. But if you've missed something, you should catch us on the YouTube channel or on Facebook or on Twitter as well. Until I see you next week, may the horse be with you.